The headlights of my beat-up Honda caught the chain-link fence first, then the weathered sign, "Sunrise Mine, authorized personnel only." I killed the engine and sat there for a second, looking at the place that was supposedly going to pay me 3 times what any other security gig offered. The main building squatted against the Wyoming darkness like something that had given up trying to look presentable years ago. Marvin Gilbert met me at the gate, and right away I knew something was off. Not just because his hands were shaking as he fumbled with the lock, but the way he kept glancing over his shoulder at the mine entrance, this black hole cut into the hillside about 50 feet from where we stood. "Ezra Ruiz." His voice had that forced casualness people use when they're trying not to sound nervous. "That's me." He led me to the guard shack, this tiny box of a building with windows on 3 sides. Inside, fluorescent lights buzzed over a metal desk, a couple of chairs, and not much else. The place smelled like old coffee and something metallic I couldn't place. "Here." Marvin pulled a laminated card from his shirt pocket. "These are the rules. You follow them exactly, understand?" I took the card. 5 rules typed out in bold letters. 1. Do not leave the shack between 2 a.m. and 2:15 a.m. for any reason. 2. If footsteps from the tunnel stop suddenly, exit immediately and wait by the parking area. 3. Between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m., do not respond to knocks or calls for help. 4. If you see a man in a blue jumpsuit, do not make eye contact or acknowledge him. 5. Stay inside until 4:01 a.m. unless specifically instructed otherwise by management. "Is this some kind of hazing thing?" I asked. "No." The word came out sharp. Marvin's pale blue eyes had this haunted quality, like he'd been awake for days. "These aren't jokes, Ezra. You follow every single rule, or you leave right now. I won't have another—" He stopped himself, jaw clenching. "Another what?" "Just follow the rules." A car pulled up outside, a rusty Toyota with one headlight dimmer than the other. A young woman got out, blonde ponytail swinging as she practically jogged toward us. She looked tired, dark circles under green eyes that kept darting between me and Marvin. "Sorry I'm early," she said, though she didn't sound sorry at all. "Wanted to make sure the new guy got properly oriented." "This is Molly Wright," Marvin said. "Day shift." Molly handed me a ring of keys, her fingers ice cold when they brushed mine. "Everything you need is labeled. Bathrooms in the main building, but—" She glanced at Marvin, then leaned closer, dropping her voice. 3 guards quit this month. Just be careful, okay?" Marvin's glare could have melted steel. "That's enough, Molly." She backed away, hands raised. "Right. Leaving now." But as she passed me, she mouthed silently, "Follow the rules." They both left within minutes, tail lights disappearing down the access road until I was alone with the hum of electricity and the weight of mountain darkness pressing against the windows. I settled into the desk chair, cheap vinyl that squeaked when I moved, and actually looked around. That's when I noticed the scratch marks on the inside of the door. Deep gouges in the wood, like someone had tried to claw their way out. Or in. The logbook sat open on the desk. I flipped back through recent entries, standard stuff mostly, perimeter checked, all clear, repeated in different handwriting. But some entries just stopped. Mid-sentence. Like on October 3rd, heard machinery at 11:47 p.m. going to check the... Nothing after that. The next entry was 2 days later, different guard. I checked my phone, 11:43 p.m. The smart thing would be to sit here, scroll through my phone, and collect the easiest paycheck of my life. But those scratch marks kept pulling my attention, and the way Marvin's hands had shaken, and Molly's whispered warning. At 11:47 p.m. exactly, I heard it. Machinery. Like an engine running deep underground, even though Marvin had been very clear. The mine had been closed for months. No active operations, no equipment down there. I stood up, moved to the window facing the mine entrance. That black opening seemed to breathe in the security lights, swallowing their glow. The sound was definitely coming from in there, a rhythmic grinding, almost like... The radio on the desk exploded with static. I jumped, spinning around as white noise filled the shack. Then, through the chaos of sound, a voice, clear as if someone was standing right behind me. "Ezra." The static cut out. Silence rushed back in, somehow louder than the noise had been. I grabbed the radio, pressed the talk button. "Hello? Who is this?" Nothing. "This is security. Identify yourself." Dead air. I set the radio down, my hand steadier than I felt. Checked the time on my phone, 11:52 p.m., 2 hours and 8 minutes until 2 a.m., until whatever these rules were trying to protect me from. The machinery sound continued, steady and patient. I found myself at the window again, staring at that tunnel entrance. 50 feet. I could walk over there, shine my flashlight inside, and probably have a perfectly logical explanation for everything in 30 seconds. But Molly's face kept flashing in my mind. Those dark circles. The way she'd practically run to her car. I sat back down, pulled out the rules card again, read them over until I had them memorized. The fourth one bothered me most. If you see a man in a blue jumpsuit, do not make eye contact or acknowledge him. That was specific. Too specific to be a prank. Midnight came and went. The machinery sound faded around 12:30, leaving just the buzz of the lights and my own breathing. I tried to focus on my phone, but the battery was draining faster than it should, down to 60% already. At 1:15 a.m., I heard footsteps, not from outside, from the tunnel. Slow, measured steps on stone, getting louder, closer. I stood up, moved away from the door. The footsteps continued, that steady rhythm, like someone who knew exactly where they were going, like they'd walked this path 100 times before. Rule 2 flashed in my mind. If footsteps from the tunnel stop suddenly, exit immediately. But they hadn't stopped. They just kept coming, closer and closer to the mine entrance, to the shack, to me. I grabbed the flashlight from the desk, heavy and solid in my hand, checked the time. 1:47 a.m., 13 minutes until 2 a.m., until I couldn't leave no matter what. The footsteps reached the mine entrance and continued, out into the night, toward the shack. I moved to the window, flashlight raised, and saw absolutely nothing. The security lights showed empty ground, undisturbed gravel, no sign of anyone walking, but the footsteps kept coming. On gravel now, that distinctive crunch of boots on stone. 10 feet from the shack, 5 feet. They stopped right outside the door. I held my breath, flashlight gripped like a weapon, waiting for knocks that didn't come, waiting for the door to open, waiting for something, anything to happen. A minute passed, 2. I checked the time, 1:58 a.m. The footsteps started again, moving away from the shack, back toward the mine. That same measured pace, unhurried. They faded into the tunnel, getting quieter and quieter until I couldn't hear them anymore. 2:00 a.m. I was locked in now, according to the rules. 15 minutes where I couldn't leave no matter what happened. My hand was still white-knuckled around the flashlight, adrenaline making everything too sharp, too clear. That's when I noticed the muddy boot prints on the floor, leading from the door to my chair. Fresh mud, still glistening under the fluorescent lights. But I'd been standing the whole time, and the door had never opened. The clock on my phone showed 2:01 a.m. I was officially trapped. I kept staring at those muddy boot prints leading to my chair, trying to make sense of them. The door was still locked from the inside. I'd checked it 3 times. The windows didn't open. There was literally no way someone could have. Movement caught my eye through the window facing the mine. Just a flicker near the entrance, like someone had stepped into the security light's reach and immediately backed away. I pressed closer to the glass, cupping my hands around my eyes to cut the glare from the fluorescence. There, a shadow that didn't fit. The security lights threw everything at sharp angles, but this shadow curved wrong, stretched in a direction that didn't match anything around it. It shifted, and for a second I thought I saw the outline of a person. Then it melted back into the darkness of the tunnel. My phone buzzed. 2:14 a.m. 1 minute. The shadow hadn't moved again. I gripped the flashlight tighter, other hand on the door handle. The second that clock hit 2:15, I was out of here. Rule or no rule, I wasn't staying locked in with those impossible footprints and whatever was playing hide and seek at the mine entrance. 2:15 a.m. I yanked the door open and froze. Footsteps from the tunnel, not the measured pace from earlier. These were faster, urgent, getting louder with each second. Then they stopped. Just stopped. Like someone had hit pause mid-stride. Rule 2 screamed in my head. If footsteps from the tunnel stop suddenly, exit immediately. I bolted from the shack, flashlight beam swinging wildly as I ran. The cold hit like a physical thing, my breath coming out in white clouds that the wind tore apart. I made it to the parking area, just my Honda and empty spaces, and spun around to face the shack. It sat there, fluorescent lights still buzzing inside, looking completely normal, except I knew those boot prints were still on the floor, and I knew something had made those footsteps stop. 5 minutes passed. 10. My ears started going numb from the cold, and I'd left my jacket inside like an idiot. But I waited, watching the shack, watching the mine entrance, watching for anything that would explain what was happening. 20 minutes in, the footsteps started again. Same measured pace as before, walking from the tunnel toward the shack. I could see them this time, or at least I could see where they were. Gravel shifted and crunched under invisible weight. A straight line from the mine to the guard shack door, the door I'd left wide open. The footsteps went inside. I heard them on the shack floor, that cheap linoleum crackling under each step. They moved to the desk, paused, then headed to the chair, my chair. Another pause, longer this time. Then they came back out. I pressed myself against my car as the invisible footsteps crunched across the gravel toward the parking area, toward me. They stopped maybe 10 feet away, and I had this insane feeling that whatever was making them was looking right at me, studying me. The gravel shifted one more time, a sound like someone turning around, and the footsteps headed back to the mine. Steady and unhurried, they faded into that black opening until I couldn't hear them anymore. I waited another 5 minutes before approaching the shack. Had to know if I was losing it or if this was actually happening. New boot prints on the floor, wet mud tracking from the door to the desk to the chair, the same path the invisible footsteps had taken. I locked the door and shoved the desk against it. Not that it would help, obviously, but it made me feel better. Checked my phone. 2:47 a.m. Still over an hour until 4 a.m., when supposedly this would end. The shack felt smaller now. Those scratch marks on the door seemed deeper. The fluorescent buzz sounded like whispers if I didn't focus on it directly. I sat on the floor in the corner farthest from the door, flashlight in my lap, and watched those muddy prints slowly dry. At 3:15 a.m. exactly, 3 knocks hit the door, sharp, professional, like someone who expected to be let in. "Hello? Security?" A woman's voice, clear and authoritative. "This is Elizabeth Patterson from corporate. I'm here for a surprise inspection." I didn't move. Rule 3. Between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m. do not respond to knocks or calls for help. I know someone's in there. I can see the lights. The voice stayed professional, maybe a little annoyed. "Could you please open up? It's freezing out here." The knocks came again, harder. "Look, I know it's late, but I've driven 3 hours for this inspection. The least you could do is..." She paused. "Oh God, is something wrong? Are you hurt? I'm calling for help if you don't answer." Every instinct told me to respond, to at least tell her to go away, but Molly's exhausted face flashed in my mind. 3 guards quit this month. "Please," the woman's voice cracked. "I think I'm lost. This place is so dark and I can't find my car, and I'm really, really cold. Could you just tell me which way to the parking lot?" The doorknob rattled. "Why won't you help me?" Her voice had gone small, scared. "I can see you in there. Why won't you even look at me?" I forced myself to look at the window. A woman stood outside, navy business suit, graying hair in a bun. She looked exactly like someone from corporate would look, except her fingers. Pressed against the glass, they were too long. Each joint had one too many segments, like someone had tried to draw human hands from memory and gotten the proportions wrong. She saw me looking and smiled. "Too many teeth. There you are," she said, and her voice wasn't scared anymore. It was hungry. "Just open the door, Ezra. Just for a second. I promise it won't hurt." She knew my name. The knocking turned to pounding. The desk I'd shoved against the door jumped with each hit. Then the pounding became scratching, those two long fingers dragging down the wood, adding new gouges to the old ones. "You can't stay in there forever," she said, almost singing it. "Everyone opens the door eventually. Everyone wants to help." I pulled out my phone to record this, to have proof I wasn't going insane. 3:42 a.m. The screen showed only static when I tried to open the camera. The scratching got worse, frantic, like an animal trying to dig through. The desk shifted an inch. "Let me in, let me in, let me in." Her words blurred together into something that wasn't quite language anymore. 3:58 a.m. The sound stopped, cut off like someone had flipped a switch. I stayed frozen in my corner, barely breathing, waiting for them to start again. But there was nothing, just the fluorescent buzz and my own heartbeat. 4 a.m. I stood up slowly, legs cramped from sitting so long. Moved to the window. The area outside the door was empty. No woman in a business suit. No sign anyone had been there at all, except for the new scratches on the door, deeper than the old ones. And in the center, carved with those impossible fingers, 2 words: "Tomorrow night." I pulled the desk away from the door and grabbed my jacket. My shift was over. I'd survived night 1 somehow. But as I headed to my car, I couldn't stop thinking about what Molly had said. 3 guards quit this month. Now I understood why. The security camera mounted on the shack's corner should have caught everything. I'd checked the footage when I got home, proved to myself this was real. But when I pulled it up on my phone while sitting in my car, letting the heater run, the video showed only static. Every single frame from 2 a.m. to 4 a.m., just white noise, except for one frame at 3:47 a.m., a single clear image of Elizabeth Patterson standing at the door. She was looking directly at the camera, and she was still smiling. I pulled into the mine's parking area at 9:45 p.m., and Molly's rusty Toyota was already there, engine running, exhaust visible in the cold air. She had her window cracked maybe 2 inches when I walked over. "You came back." She sounded surprised. Her green eyes had that same exhausted look, but there was something else now. Fear, maybe. Or recognition. "Yeah, well, rent's due next week." She didn't laugh. "Marvin was here earlier, asking about you, whether you followed all the rules, if you saw anything unusual." Her fingers drummed against the steering wheel. "He never asks about the first night. Never." "What did you tell him?" "Nothing. Said you seemed fine when I got here this morning." She glanced at the mine entrance, then back at me. "Ezra, I think—" She stopped, shook her head. "Just be careful tonight. More careful than last night." "That's super reassuring." She rolled up her window and drove off without another word, taillights disappearing down the access road faster than necessary. The shack looked exactly the same, fluorescent lights buzzing, cheap vinyl chair, those deep scratches on the door that now included "Tomorrow Night" carved in the center. Except the logbook was open to today's date, and someone had already written an entry. "ER survived night 1. The handwriting was neat, precise, nothing like my chicken scratch or the other guards' entries I'd seen. I flipped back through the pages. No one else had those initials, just me. Ezra Ruiz. I grabbed a pen to add my own entry, then stopped. The previous page, the one with all the half-finished entries I'd read last night, was gone, torn out clean at the binding, like someone didn't want me comparing handwriting. My phone buzzed, 10:27 p.m. I settled into the chair, trying to ignore how the vinyl still held a shape that wasn't quite mine, like someone else had been sitting here recently. At 10:30 p.m., footsteps echoed from the tunnel. Too early. Way too early. According to my notes from last night, they shouldn't start until after 1 a.m. I stood up, moved to the window. The footsteps were different too, lighter, more casual, like someone taking an evening stroll instead of that measured, purposeful pace from before. Marvin walked out of the mine entrance. He saw me watching and waved, that same nervous energy from yesterday but cranked up somehow. His smile was too wide, showing too many teeth. He walked to the shack and let himself in without knocking. "Evening, Ezra." His voice had this cheerful quality that didn't match his pale blue eyes at all. "Thought I'd check in, see how you're holding up." "Fine. Everything's fine." He nodded, still smiling, and sat in the corner chair, the one with the broken wheel that squeaked whenever you moved. Except when Marvin sat down, it didn't make a sound. Good, that's real good." He folded his hands in his lap. "Mind if I stay a while? Gets lonely in the office." "I thought you went home after dropping me off." His smile got wider. Did I say that? I couldn't remember if he had or not, but something about this whole thing felt wrong. His clothes were exactly the same as yesterday. Brown canvas jacket, stained white shirt, dark blue jeans. Not similar, identical. Down to a coffee stain on his left sleeve shaped like a crescent moon. And despite supposedly working all day, nothing was wrinkled, nothing was different. "Actually," I said, "I need to do a perimeter check. You know, follow protocol." "No need for that." He hadn't moved, hadn't shifted position at all since sitting down. Better to stay inside where it's safe. I watched him for a full minute. He didn't blink. Not once. "Marvin, when did the mine close?" "Months ago, you know that." "What month?" That smile stretched wider, impossibly wide. The month it needed to. My phone showed 11:15 p.m. Marvin had been sitting there for 45 minutes without moving, without blinking, without breathing in any way I could see, just watching me with those pale blue eyes and that circus freak smile. At midnight, I pretended to write in the logbook while keeping him in my peripheral vision. Still no movement. Still no blinking. The fluorescent lights hummed, and I realized I couldn't hear him breathing because he wasn't. No rise and fall of his chest. Nothing. 12:30 a.m., 1 a.m., 1:30 a.m. He sat there like a mannequin someone had dressed up and positioned. Except mannequins didn't smile. Mannequins didn't watch you with eyes that tracked your every movement while the rest of them stayed perfectly, unnaturally still. At 1:45 a.m., the desk phone rang. I'd forgotten there even was a phone, buried under supply request forms. The ringer was sharp, mechanical. I picked it up on the third ring. Sunrise Mine Security. "Ezra?" Marvin's voice, stressed and irritated. "Where the hell were you for the evening check-in? I've been calling your cell for an hour." I looked at my phone. No missed calls. Then I looked at the thing in the corner that was still smiling at me with Marvin's face. "I'm here," I said carefully. "At the shack." "Obviously you're at the shack now. I'm asking why you didn't check in at 9 like you're supposed to. You never mentioned a 9 o'clock check-in. It's in the paperwork. Christ, did you even read—" He paused. "Wait, is someone there with you?" The Marvin thing in the corner tilted its head, just its head. The neck bent at an angle that should have snapped vertebrae. "No," I lied. "No one's here." "You sure? Because I'm looking at the security feed from my office and—" The line went to static, then dead. The Marvin thing stood up, It didn't push itself up or shift its weight forward. It just unfolded, like someone had pulled invisible strings and its body responded in segments. First the legs straightened, then the torso, then the arms dropped to its sides. That smile never changed. "You weren't supposed to answer the phone, Ezra." Its voice came out wrong, like someone had recorded Marvin speaking and played it back through broken speakers. "That's going to be a new rule. No phone calls after midnight." I grabbed the emergency flare gun from under the desk, something I'd noticed earlier and figured might be useful. The Marvin thing took a step forward, its knee bending backward before snapping into the right position. "You can't leave until 4, it said, still using that broken recording of Marvin's voice. "Those are the rules. Rules don't say anything about you being here." Its smile got impossibly wider, the corners of its mouth nearly touching its ears. "I'm management." I backed toward the door, flare gun raised. The thing moved forward in jerky segments like a film missing frames. 1 second it was by the chair. Next it was at the desk. Next it was reaching for me with arms that had grown too long, fingers stretching like taffy. I yanked the door open and ran. The cold hit hard, but adrenaline kept me moving. Behind me, I heard that thing laughing with Marvin's voice, if Marvin's voice had been fed through a wood chipper. My Honda was 20 feet away, 15, 10. Headlights blazed to life from the access road. A black pickup truck skidded to a stop between me and my car, and the passenger door flew open. "Get in!" A woman's voice, urgent but controlled. "Now!" I didn't have time to think. The Marvin thing had emerged from the shack, moving in those horrible stop-motion jerks, covering ground way too fast. I dove into the truck. The woman threw it in reverse before I'd even closed the door, spinning us around in a cloud of gravel dust. In the side mirror, I saw the Marvin thing standing where the truck had been, head tilted at that broken angle, still smiling. "Sarah Peterson," the woman said, not taking her eyes off the road as she floored it away from the mine. "And before you ask, yes, I've been watching. Yes, I know what that thing was. And no, you're not losing your mind." I looked back. The mine had already vanished into darkness behind us, but I could still feel that smile somewhere in the night, waiting. "What the hell was that?" Sarah's hands tightened on the wheel. "That's what happens when someone breaks too many rules. When the mine gets hungry enough, it starts making its own pieces to play with." She glanced at me, and in the dashboard light, I saw her hazel eyes were deadly serious. "We need to talk. All 3 of us. Before this gets worse." 3? You, me, and Molly. If she's still Molly by the time we find her. She pulled out her phone, handed it to me. "Call her. Tell her to meet us at the Casper exit truck stop. Don't mention the mine on the phone." "Why not?" "Because it listens. It's always listening now." I dialed Molly's number, looking back one more time at the darkness where the mine waited. Sarah was right. This was definitely getting worse. The diner was one of those places that never quite looked open, but never actually closed. Fluorescent lights too bright against the pre-dawn darkness, red vinyl booths patched with duct tape, coffee that tasted like it had been brewing since the Clinton administration. Sarah had driven us here in complete silence, taking back roads I didn't even know existed, doubling back twice, checking her mirrors like someone was tailing us, which, considering what I'd just seen at the mine, maybe something was. She picked a booth in the back corner where she could watch both the entrance and the kitchen door. Molly sat beside me, her hands wrapped around a mug of coffee she hadn't touched. Every few minutes she'd start to say something, then stop herself, like the words kept getting stuck. 5 years ago, Sarah said, sliding a manila folder across the table, I took the same job you did. Same ridiculous pay, same weird hours, same rules. She had this way of talking that was all business, like she was giving a presentation instead of explaining supernatural horror. Lasted 6 days before I figured out what was really happening. I opened the folder, old photocopies of personnel records, newspaper clippings, geological surveys. The first page showed a black and white photo of a woman in a navy business suit, hair pulled back in a severe bun. The caption read, "Elizabeth Patterson, Safety Inspector, 1987. "That's her," I said. "The woman who knocked on my door last night. Been knocking on doors for 36 years. Sarah pulled out her phone, swiped to a video file. "This is from 3 months ago. Different guard, same routine." The footage was grainy but clear enough. A man about my age standing in the shack, and there was Elizabeth at the door, those 2 long fingers scratching at the wood. The timestamp showed 3:15 a.m., the exact same time she'd shown up for me. "The patterns never change," Sarah continued. "Same times, same approaches, same words, because they're not really choosing to do it. They're following a script." Molly finally spoke, her voice rough. "The rules aren't protecting us. No, they're feeding it." Sarah pulled out another document, a map of the mine's tunnel system. "Every time you follow a rule, every time you don't leave when the footsteps stop, every time you ignore the knocking, you're giving it what it wants. Fear, confusion, that specific kind of dread when you know something's wrong but you follow orders anyway." "That's insane." "Is it?" Sarah looked at me. "You sat in that shack for 2 hours with something wearing Marvin's face. You knew it wasn't him, but you stayed. Why? Because the rules said I couldn't leave until 4. Because I needed this job. Because I was more afraid of breaking the rules than I was of that thing." "Exactly." She pulled out another photo. A man in a blue mining jumpsuit, broad shoulders, scarred hands. Tony Jacobs. Disappeared the same day Elizabeth died. October 15th, 1987. There was a collapse in Tunnel 7. 12 people were underground. Only 10 bodies were recovered. "Let me guess," I said. "Tony and Elizabeth were the 2 they never found." "The mine kept them." Sarah's voice went flat. It had been dormant for decades, maybe centuries, just a regular copper mine with slightly higher accident rates than normal. Then Sunrise Corp started using new blasting techniques, going deeper. They woke something up. Molly's hand started shaking, coffee sloshing in her mug. "It talks to you after a while, in your dreams at first. Then, when you're awake, tells you things about the other guards, about their fears, their secrets." She looked at me. "It knows you're sending money to your parents, knows about your dad's accident." My stomach dropped. "How do you?" "I don't. It does." Molly's green eyes were too bright, almost feverish. 2 weeks I've been there. 2 weeks of it whispering, showing me things. And now I can feel it even when I'm not at the mine, like part of me is still there, walking those tunnels. Sarah leaned forward. "That's how it spreads, through the guards. Marvin was one of the first to make a deal. He keeps it fed with new people, and in exchange, he gets to keep some version of himself, some pretense of being human. But he's not. No, not anymore." Sarah pulled up another video on her phone. "This is from tonight, about an hour ago." The security footage showed the mine entrance. 5 figures in blue jumpsuits walked out in perfect synchronization, heading toward the shack. Behind them, barely visible in the tunnel's darkness, something massive shifted. Not a person, not even shaped like a person. Just movement, like the darkness itself had decided to stretch. "The mine's getting hungrier," Sarah said. "The rules aren't satisfying it anymore. It needs more guards, more fear, more everything. And if Marvin's deal breaks, what happens? It won't stay contained to the property. Whatever's down there, whatever those miners woke up, it'll spread. Find new places to nest, new people to feed on." The waitress came by to refill our coffee. Normal person doing a normal job at a normal diner, completely unaware that 3 people in the corner booth were discussing the supernatural hunger of an abandoned mine. She smiled at us and moved on. "So we seal it," I said. "Call the cops, the FBI, whoever handles this kind of thing." Sarah laughed, but there was no humor in it. You think Sunrise Corp doesn't know? They've been paying Marvin to handle the situation for decades, cheaper than a real cleanup. And the authorities? They'd send investigators, more people for it to take. Then what do we do? She reached into her bag, pulled out a thick folder of geological surveys and structural assessments. For 5 years, I've been studying the mine's layout, every tunnel, every support beam, every weak point. The thing down there, it's tied to the physical structure. Destroy the mine, and you destroy its anchor to this world. You want to blow it up. I want to seal it, permanently. And I've been setting charges in the deeper tunnels for months, using my knowledge from when I worked there, but I can't trigger them remotely. Someone has to go in. Molly stood up abruptly. I need air. She walked outside, and through the window I watched her pace beside Sarah's truck, arms wrapped around herself like she was trying to hold something in. She's running out of time, Sarah said quietly. Another day, maybe 2, and she'll be like Marvin, or worse. There has to be another way. There is. Sarah checked her phone. We have until 4 a.m. That's when the current cycle ends. If we can get into the mine before then, while it's still bound by its own rules, we might have a chance. But we'd need Marvin's cooperation, or at least his absence. The thing pretending to be Marvin is still at the mine. No, that was a projection, a puppet. The real Marvin, what's left of him, he'll be coming soon. He has to maintain the illusion of normalcy, has to pretend the mine is just a job site with some unusual hazards. It's part of his deal. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. Don't answer that, Sarah said, but I'd already hit accept. Ezra. Marvin's voice, but not from the phone, from right behind me. I turned. He stood at our booth, looking exactly like he had that first night, nervous, sweating, hands shaking, except his eyes were completely black, like Tony's in the tunnel. We need to talk about your future with the company, he said, and his smile had too many teeth. All of you. Especially you, Sarah. You've been such a dedicated employee. Sarah's hand moved to her bag, where I could see the outline of something that might have been a gun. Hello, Marvin, she said. I was wondering when you'd show up. You know how it is. Management responsibilities. He slid into the booth beside me, trapping me against the window. He smelled wrong, like copper and earth and something chemical. We should head back. Wouldn't want to break any rules. Outside, Molly had stopped pacing. She stood perfectly still beside the truck, staring at something I couldn't see. Then she started walking, not toward the diner, toward the road, toward the direction of the mine. Molly! I started to get up, but Marvin's hand clamped down on my shoulder. His fingers were ice cold through my shirt. She knows where she belongs, he said. You all do. You just need a little more time to accept it. Sarah stood slowly. Let him go, Marvin. Or what? You'll finally use that gun you've been carrying? We both know bullets don't work on me anymore. His grip tightened, and I felt my shoulder going numb. Besides, you made your own deal, remember? You can't hurt me any more than I can hurt you. Not directly. But I can do this. Sarah pulled out her phone, hit a number. A second later, an explosion echoed in the distance. Small, controlled, but unmistakable. Marvin's head snapped toward the sound. What did you do? Sealed Tunnel 3. That's one less path for your friend to use. She smiled coldly. I told you I've been busy. His grip loosened just enough. I twisted free, scrambled out of the booth. Marvin stood, and for a second his form flickered, not quite solid, like whatever was maintaining his shape was being pulled in two directions. You're making a mistake, he said. All of you. The mine's been here longer than this town, longer than the state. You can't stop something that old with a few sticks of dynamite. Maybe not, Sarah said, but I can sure as hell try. We backed toward the exit. Marvin didn't follow, just stood there watching us with those black eyes. The other people in the diner didn't seem to notice him at all, like he existed in a slightly different space than the rest of us. 4 a.m., he called out as we reached the door. That's when the rules reset. That's when new deals can be made. You want to save Molly? You want to end this? Be at the mine before 4. It's a trap, I said. Of course it's a trap. His smile widened. But it's also the truth. Sarah knows. She's always known. Haven't you, Sarah? Sarah pushed me out the door without answering. We ran to her truck and I could see Molly in the distance, still walking steadily down the road. Get in, Sarah said, starting the engine. We need to catch her before she gets too far. As we pulled out, I looked back at the diner. Marvin stood at the window, perfectly still, watching us go. Then the lights inside flickered and he was gone. What did he mean? I asked. About you always knowing? Sarah pressed harder on the accelerator, closing the distance to Molly. I'll explain everything, but first, we need to get her back, because if she reaches the mine on her own, if she goes in without us... What? Then we've already lost. The truck's headlights caught Molly's Toyota first, smashed through the chain-link gate at an angle that made my stomach drop. The driver's door hung open like a broken wing, interior light casting a weak glow across empty seats. Sarah killed the engine but left the lights on. 3:47, she said, checking her watch. 13 minutes. We got out and I could hear the metal gate creaking in the wind, twisted where Molly's car had punched through. No sign of her, but fresh footprints led from the Toyota straight to the mine entrance. That black hole in the hillside looked hungrier than ever. The guard shack's door stood open. Inside, the fluorescent lights flickered in a rhythm that felt deliberate. The laminated rules card lay in pieces across the desk, not just torn but shredded, like someone had attacked it with their fingernails or claws. Mixed in with the white fragments were drops of blood, still wet. She's fighting it, Sarah said, but she didn't sound hopeful. She headed back to her truck, popped the tailgate. Help me with these. The truck bed held 3 military surplus duffel bags. Sarah unzipped one, revealing blocks of what looked like gray clay wrapped in plastic, each with wires and a small electronic device attached. The smell hit me immediately. Sharp, chemical, dangerous. C4, she said, handing me one of the bags. It was heavier than I expected. The mine has 7 main support structures keeping the tunnels from collapsing. I've already compromised 4 over the past few months. Small charges, just enough to weaken them without triggering a full collapse. And these finish the job? If we place them right. She shouldered another bag, left the third. The entity down there, whatever it is, it's tied to the physical space. The mine isn't just where it lives. The mine is part of it. Destroy one, destroy both. You sure about that? She looked at me, and for the first time since I'd met her, I saw uncertainty in her eyes. No, but it's the best theory I've got. We headed for the entrance. The security lights had all gone out, leaving just our flashlights to cut through the dark. 10 feet from the tunnel, whispers started. Not from inside the mine, from the air around us. Should have stayed home, Ezra. A man's voice, young, scared. Should have listened to your gut. She warned you. A woman this time, older. Molly tried to warn you. We all tried. Multiple voices now overlapping. But you needed the money, needed to prove something, just like us. Sarah grabbed my arm. Don't listen, they're echoes. Everyone who's worked here, everyone who's died here, the mine records them, plays them back. We entered the tunnel. The temperature dropped 20 degrees instantly, and our breath came out in clouds that seemed to hang in the air too long. The whispers followed us, getting more personal. Your father never recovered, did he? This voice was different, clearer. Still walks with that limp, still can't work, because you weren't there to help. I tried to block it out, focusing on the beam of my flashlight as we moved deeper. The tunnel walls were rough granite, sweating moisture that reflected our lights in strange patterns. Mining equipment sat abandoned along the sides, pickaxes, helmets, a cart that might have been from the 1950s, or the 1850s. 50 yards in, the tunnel opened into a larger chamber. Our lights found them immediately. Molly stood in the center, perfectly still, arms at her sides. Around her, 4 figures in blue jumpsuits formed a semicircle. Their faces were hidden by shadows that didn't match the angle of our lights, darkness that clung to them like masks. One of them was Tony Jacobs. I recognized his build, the way he stood. The others could have been anyone, everyone. "Molly?" I stepped forward, but Sarah caught my arm again. "Wait." Molly's head turned toward us, slow, mechanical. Her green eyes reflected our lights like a cat's. "You're late," she said, but it wasn't quite her voice. Too flat, too empty. "He's been waiting." Footsteps echoed from the tunnel behind the blue figures. Marvin walked out, and any pretense of humanity was gone. His body moved wrong, joints bending in too many places, skin rippling like something underneath was trying to escape. His smile stretched literally from ear to ear, showing rows of teeth that belonged in a shark's mouth. "Welcome back, Sarah." His voice came from everywhere at once, the walls, the ceiling, inside our own heads. 5 years of preparation, and this is your plan? Explosives? How disappointingly human. "Sometimes simple is best," Sarah said, setting down her duffel bag. "You still don't understand." Marvin's form shifted, grew taller. "The mine isn't just alive. The mine is hunger itself. It existed before humans found it, and it'll exist long after you're gone. You can't destroy a concept with dynamite. Maybe not, but I can bury it." Marvin laughed, and the sound made my teeth ache. "You made a deal, Sarah. Your freedom for a promise to return. You can't break that any more than I can break mine." "I know." Sarah pulled something from her pocket, a small remote with a single red button. "That's why I'm not breaking it. I'm fulfilling it. I promised to come back and settle the debt. Never said I'd leave again." Understanding hit me like cold water. "Sarah, no. The mine needs an anchor," she said, not looking at me. "Someone who knows its nature, who's been touched by it. Right now that's Marvin. But if he's gone, if the mine is sealed with someone else inside who's made a deal, it stays contained," Marvin finished. His smile faltered. "You'd trap yourself here forever." "Better than letting it spread." She looked at me. "Get Molly out. You've got maybe 3 minutes once I trigger this." "You can't." "I can." She pressed the button. The explosion wasn't huge, but it was precise. Somewhere deeper in the mine, one of her earlier charges detonated. The whole mountain shook, dust raining from the ceiling. The blue figures wavered like bad TV reception. Marvin lunged forward, moving faster than physics should allow. Sarah dropped the first duffel bag, kicked it toward him. He stopped, realizing what would happen if he hit it. "Run!" she shouted. I grabbed Molly's arm. She didn't resist, but she didn't help either. Dead weight. I half dragged, half carried her toward the entrance as Sarah triggered another charge. This one was closer, and I felt the shockwave in my chest. The blue figures were following us, walking in that synchronized way, but the explosions were affecting them. They flickered, faded, solidified again. Tony reached for us with hands that weren't quite solid anymore. Behind us, Marvin screamed, a sound like metal tearing. I glanced back to see Sarah standing her ground, the remote in one hand, her gun in the other. Not shooting at Marvin, but at the duffel bags she'd placed. Smart. Bullets might not hurt him, but they'd sure set off C4. The tunnel started collapsing, not all at once, but in sections like dominoes falling. Rocks the size of cars broke free from the ceiling. I pushed harder, my legs burning, Molly stumbling along beside me. The entrance was just ahead, a square of pre-dawn gray, 20 feet, 10. A massive crack split the air, and I knew Sarah had triggered the main charges. We burst out of the mine as the mountain came down. The roar was deafening, thousands of tons of rock falling, sealing everything inside. I pulled Molly clear, both of us hitting the ground hard as debris rained down around us. When the dust settled, the mine entrance was gone. Just a wall of broken stone and twisted metal from the support beams, sealed, permanent. Molly gasped beside me like she'd been holding her breath for hours. What What happened? Sarah happened, I said. We sat there as the sun came up, watching the dust settle over what used to be the Sunrise Mine. Molly didn't remember most of it, just fragments, like a bad dream. The whispers were gone. That feeling of being watched, of something hungry waiting in the dark, gone. The state police showed up around 6, then the fire department, then people in suits who asked a lot of questions. The official story was simple: unstable mine shaft, structural collapse, 2 security guards lucky to escape. Sarah Peterson was listed as missing, presumed dead. But the part that really got me: when they pulled up the mining company's records, the Sunrise Mine had been officially closed since October 15, 1987, the day Elizabeth Patterson and Tony Jacobs died. Every permit, every safety inspection, every employee record after that, none of it existed in any official database. Marvin Gilbert had been reported missing 3 years ago by his ex-wife. The mining company Molly and I had been working for, no record of it anywhere. Our paychecks? They'd cleared, but the account they came from was registered to a company that had been dissolved in 1987. I kept Sarah's remote. Found it in my pocket later, though I don't remember picking it up. Sometimes I wonder if she's really gone, or if she's down there in the dark, keeping watch, making sure whatever the mine was, whatever it is, stays buried. The investigators ruled it an accident. Case closed. Molly moved to Denver to start art school. I went back to Colorado, finished my degree. But sometimes, late at night, I dream about tunnels, about footsteps that don't match anything human, about Sarah standing in the dark with a remote in her hand, waiting. And in those dreams, she's still smiling.